Have you ever felt that the closer you get to your true self, the more distant some familiar faces become? Maybe you've blamed yourself for not fitting in, for no longer feeling the same connection, or for letting go of relationships that once meant the world to you. But what if I told you that you're not losing people? You're finally finding yourself. There comes a moment in life, often after weathering countless storms, when the mask you've worn starts to weigh too heavily. The things you once tolerated begin to feel like thorns in your soul. It's not arrogance, it's not emotional coldness, it's the quiet, undeniable call of your true self, urging you to come home. Today marks the beginning of a journey, a return, not to the past, but to the essence of who you are. This is not a story of endings, it's a story of rebirth. Because when the soul awakens, some presences fade, and others were never meant to stay. There comes a day, though you might not know exactly when you wake up and something just doesn't feel right anymore. Conversations begin to feel hollow, laughter sounds rehearsed, and the people who once lit up your world now only add noise. Have you ever felt that strange sense of disconnect, like you're drifting away from everything and everyone? Sometimes it starts with disappointment, other times it's a quiet betrayal, and sometimes it's just the exhaustion of pretending for too long. And then, without asking for permission, something inside you begins to shift. Slowly, life starts to clear the path ahead. People drift away, bonds unravel, relationships that once felt eternal dissolve quietly, without drama. And you, lost in confusion, start to question everything. Is it me? Am I the one failing? Am I being too much or not enough? Have I forgotten how to love? But behind that ache is a deeper truth, one you may not have seen yet. You're not losing people. You're simply refusing to abandon yourself any longer. You're no longer silencing your voice just to keep the peace. No longer saying yes when everything inside you screamed no. No longer shrinking yourself to keep someone else from leaving. Every time you did that, you betrayed a part of you. But now, your soul is awakening. It's bringing you back home. Loss in this light isn't an ending. It's a beginning. It's life whispering in your ear. You don't need to pretend anymore. You can be who you truly are now. There's a kind of pain that doesn't burn, but cleanses. Not the pain that destroys, but the one that reveals. It's the aching emptiness after someone walks away. And yet deep down, you know they no longer belonged in your new world. Maybe you cried for them. Maybe you begged them to stay. Maybe you tried to hold on to something that had already crumbled, just to avoid facing abandonment again. But then came the moment when your soul said, enough. And when the soul speaks, the ego trembles, because the ego wants to control, to hold on, to understand. But the soul only wants to be free. Every relationship that ends during this process is not a loss. It's a purification, like pulling weeds from a garden. At first, it hurts to tear out the roots, but only then can something real grow. Can you see it now? You're not losing people. You're losing the desperate need to be accepted at any cost. You're shedding the mask you wore to belong. And though it hurts, it's one of the purest acts of self-love, because some connections ask you to stop being yourself just to remain in them. And when you finally decide not to do that anymore, they collapse under their own weight. That's not rejection, it's coherence. And in the empty space that remains, maybe lonely at first, a new seed begins to sprout, the seed of your authenticity. There's a quiet moment, subtle and almost invisible, when you realize that the person you lost wasn't truly aligned with who you are now. That's not contempt. It's not pride. It's just the truth. For years, you built your identity around what others expected from you. You shaped yourself to be liked, to belong, to avoid being alone. But something has changed. You can't keep playing that role anymore. When the soul wakes up, it becomes selective. It can no longer stand fakeness, emotional games, empty conversations. It starts rejecting what doesn't resonate with its essence. And that comes with a cost. Some people will leave. But the beautiful thing is, it's not you who pushes them away. Life gently removes them, like dry leaves carried off by the wind. Have you noticed? Some people stop calling. Some friendships dissolve without conflict. That's not a loss. That's realignment. You're not losing. You're letting go of old versions of yourself. And with them, the people who only fit those outdated identities. And then, something magical happens. You start to attract what once seemed impossible. Relationships with soul, with truth, with depth. Because once you stop pretending, you become a magnet for authenticity. After someone leaves, what remains is silence. Not just any silence, but one that lingers, that wraps itself around you, heavy and profound. It's the echo of every word left unspoken, every embrace that never happened, every ending that never got a goodbye. And in that silence, many panic. They run from the emptiness. They try to fill it with distractions, new people, new stimuli, anything to avoid feeling. But you are making a choice, a quiet, courageous, and profound choice. You are choosing to stay, to sit still in the middle of that silence and actually listen to it. Do you know how incredibly brave that is? Because that silence, that emptiness, is not just the absence of someone else. It's the unraveling of a version of you that existed to hold them, to carry the weight of their presence. It's the version of you who stayed quiet just to be liked. The version who said yes out of fear of abandonment, who preferred shallow company to the terrifying thought of facing your own solitude. That version of you was always negotiating, always bending, always shrinking. And now that they're gone, whoever they were, part of you is gone too. The part that only knew itself through another. That's the part that hurts. That's what makes the silence so loud. But as you remain with yourself, as you refuse to run, to numb, to distract, something powerful begins to happen. It's like a slow, ancient alchemy. No, the pain doesn't vanish. It doesn't dissolve like sugar in water. But it does transform. It stops being punishment and starts becoming a teacher. The sharp ache that once screamed now begins to whisper truths. Quiet, honest truths that you couldn't hear before. And one of those truths is this: not everyone who leaves your life hurts you. Some people save you by walking away. In their absence, they gift you freedom. They carve a path back to yourself. A self that was buried under layers of pretending, pleasing, and surviving. So stay there. Stay a little longer in that silence. Don't rush to fill the void with noise or people or distractions, because in that empty space, something extraordinary is happening. That's where your real self begins to emerge. Slowly, awkwardly, like a seed breaking through the soil. It's fragile, yes, but it's also true. Every relationship, whether romantic, platonic, or familial, is an invisible exchange. You give a piece of yourself to feel like you belong. You mold yourself, chip away your edges, polish your roughness just to be accepted. And sometimes, without realizing it, you begin to hollow out. You lose your spark, your essence, your soul. On the outside, everything looks normal. You smile. You show up. You say, "I'm fine," even when you're breaking inside. You laugh when it hurts. You remain silent when something wounds you. You pretend you're okay, just so others don't feel uncomfortable. You become a version of yourself that's easier for others to digest. But there comes a sacred, terrifying moment when you simply can't do it anymore. The act becomes too heavy. The mask begins to crack, and the persona you've carefully crafted no longer holds. And then life, in its infinite, ruthless wisdom, begins to strip away everything that isn't real. It doesn't ask for permission. It just starts unraveling the illusions, and you're left with the truth, raw, unfiltered, and sometimes devastating. What hurts the most about losing people isn't always the loss itself. It's the shattering of the fantasy you built with them. It's the realization that they didn't love your essence. They loved the performance. They loved the version of you that was convenient, agreeable, useful. And that realization cuts deep, but it also liberates you. Because once the mask falls, the false begins to disappear. And with it, so do the people who were only drawn to the image of you. The you that made them feel comfortable, not the real, messy, evolving you. The ones who stayed out of convenience, routine, or what you represented, not out of true connection. And what's left? You. Just you. Exposed, raw, honest, but also strong. Ready. Finally prepared to connect with others from a place of truth instead of performance. Jung once said, "The persona is a system of adaptation to the world, but individuation begins when we stop being what others expect." And this is the beginning of that journey, the path of truth, the path of relationships without masks, the path of love without the sacrifice of your soul. At first, everything that breaks feels like a disaster. A relationship, a friendship, a bond you thought would last forever. It all shatters, and you stand there, surrounded by the wreckage, wondering if you can survive the weight of it all. But let me tell you something, from the deepest part of my heart, no breakage comes without a revelation. What falls apart, what disintegrates, shows you what can no longer hold. And that, my friend, is not failure. It's clarity, a painful kind of clarity, but clarity nonetheless. Have you ever felt like you gave everything, your time, your love, your energy, and still it wasn't enough, that you emptied yourself trying to fill someone else, and in the end, all you were left with was your own silence? That wasn't weakness. That wasn't foolishness. That was your soul whispering, "This isn't where you belong." Even if your ego couldn't understand it, your soul knew. Some loves only enter our lives to illuminate the wounds we haven't healed. Every person who leaves takes with them a chapter of your story, but they also leave behind a mirror, a reflection of who you were, what you gave, and what it's time to release. And in that strange, sacred place of loss, something unexpected happens. You discover your strength, not the kind of strength that roars, but the kind that breathes, the kind that's been sleeping inside you, waiting for the moment you touched rock bottom and realized you were still alive. Life doesn't take things from you just to punish you. It frees you from what no longer serves your growth. Nobody tells you this, but being your authentic self, really being yourself, is deeply uncomfortable at first. It's not immediate freedom. It's not bliss or light. It's fear. It's disorientation. It's like walking barefoot across unfamiliar terrain, every step uncertain and strange. Because when you stop pleasing, people disappear. When you start speaking your truth, some take offense. And when you choose your peace over keeping up appearances, others will call you selfish. Sound familiar? That is when the real test begins. Are you truly willing to stay with yourself, even if it means walking alone for a while? Do you have the courage to hold your truth, even when no one is clapping, even when the applause falls silent, and the world turns its back? Being yourself isn't just about authenticity, it's an act of bravery. It's about daring to disappoint expectations, to break unspoken agreements, to stop living someone else's story and begin writing your own. It's a rebellion against everything you were told you had to be in order to be accepted. And yes, it will hurt at first. The silence will be heavy, the absence will sting, and the loneliness will echo. But slowly, something begins to emerge from that silence. A peace that doesn't depend on another person. A joy that isn't loud, but bubbles up gently from within. A feeling of being at home, even when no one else is there. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And that privilege begins the moment you stop performing. The moment you finally choose to be you. There's a kind of solitude that isn't punishment. It's medicine. A solitude that doesn't crush you, but restores you. That doesn't abandon you, but returns you to yourself. When you've lost people, let go of bonds that once defined you. You arrive at a quiet space where everything seems to pause. Most people run from that place. They sprint toward noise, distraction, the familiar and the shallow. But you chose to stay. You, watching this right now, made the brave decision to remain. And that, dear heart, is what courage looks like. In that solitude, the reconstruction begins. You begin to see yourself without filters, to hear yourself without noise, to touch parts of you that you had buried under companionship and validation. And in that sacred silence, you realize something important. Many of your past relationships were nothing more than a shelter to avoid facing yourself. They were distractions disguised as connections, attempts to avoid looking inward. But when there's no one left to please, no one to care for, no one to blame, you begin to discover who you are without roles, without dependencies, without disguises. It's uncomfortable, it's raw, but it's also revealing. Because in that fertile stillness, the voice of your soul begins to rise. And slowly, what once felt like emptiness transforms into something sacred. You are no longer alone. You are with yourself. And in that companionship, a new kind of love is born. A love that doesn't come from lack, but from wholeness. Not every ending is a failure. Some doors close quietly, without a bang, without drama, without explanation. And though it may feel like rejection at first, it's often protection. When your soul begins to grow, your energy shifts. You stop resonating with the same things. The superficial no longer excites you. What you once tolerated becomes unbearable. And then something inevitable happens. Life starts closing off access to everything that no longer aligns with who you're becoming. People who used to crave your presence no longer reach out. Places that once felt like home now feel foreign. Conversations you used to enjoy now seem meaningless. It's as if part of your identity is slowly dissolving. And with it, old bonds fade, routines crumble, and even dreams you once held dear begin to feel outdated. But this is not coincidence. It's evolution. Because when the soul awakens, it can no longer live in the same old spaces. It needs breath. It needs truth. It needs depth. And often, to reach that depth, it must let go. Jung said, "What you fail to bring to consciousness appears in your life as fate." These doors closing right now are the threshold to a more conscious life. Trust that what's leaving is leaving because its time is up. And what is on its way is coming with the same clarity that something within you now whispers, I can no longer stay where I am, not myself. There are griefs that aren't about losing someone else, but about leaving behind a version of yourself. A version that was excellent at surviving, but never really knew how to live. That version of you who smiled to keep the peace, who stayed silent to avoid conflict, who carried inherited fears and outdated beliefs. No one prepares you for this type of mourning. You cry without knowing why. A faceless melancholy takes hold of you. You feel nostalgia for a life that no longer fits. You are shedding who you used to be in order to become who you truly are. And yes, it hurts. It hurts because it means detaching from even what worked. It means saying goodbye to habits, routines, relationships, even accomplishments that were all built by a self that no longer resides in you. Does any of this sound familiar? Maybe you've been quieter lately, more selective with your energy, more introspective. That's not depression. That's not disconnection. That's your soul rearranging itself. That's your deep self recalibrating everything to align with your inner truth. And in the middle of what seems like chaos, something sacred is happening. You're finding your way back to yourself. Carl Jung said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." The same applies when you finally meet yourself. So don't be afraid if you feel like you're no longer who you once were. This isn't loss, it's rebirth. The birth of your most authentic self. When everything falls apart, when people walk away, when silence covers everything, that's when the shadow appears. Not to frighten you, but to be seen. Not to punish you, but to show you what's always been there, waiting for your attention. The shadow is not evil. It's unexpressed pain, unattended wounds, the parts of you you learned to hide so others would accept you. And what happens when there's no one left to please? The shadow speaks, and it tells you uncomfortable truths. It tells you you've abandoned yourself, that you've loved others more than you've ever loved yourself, that you've tolerated what should have never been accepted. And yes, it hurts, but it also sets you free. Because what remains unspoken repeats itself. What stays hidden ends up controlling you from the shadows. This moment where you feel alone, where everything is uncertain, is the perfect stage to face that rejected part of you. Not to judge it, but to integrate it. Because you cannot be whole if you're at war with your own darkness. Jung said it clearly. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Today, in your solitude, in your silence, you have a chance. Don't run from your shadow. Embrace it. Listen to it. Because only by accepting it can you truly be free. Letting go hurts, but letting go with resentment poisons you. Because when someone leaves and your heart is filled with bitterness, you're not truly freeing yourself. You're chaining your soul to something that no longer exists. It's natural to feel anger. It's human to remember the pain. But there comes a point in your inner journey when you understand that forgiveness is not for the other person. It's for you. It's not about justifying the unjustifiable or forgetting the moments that left a mark on your story. It's about releasing the burden of carrying emotions that no longer serve your growth or peace. Why keep reliving what broke you over and over in your mind? Why continue feeding pain if you already understood that the connection had no future. Letting go without resentment means understanding that each person acted from their own level of consciousness. And so did you. You acted from your wounds, from your fears, from your deep desire to love and be loved. And in recognizing that they failed you, you also acknowledged that you failed yourself when you stayed in a place that no longer reflected who you truly were. But this truth doesn't punish. It sets you free. Carl Jung once said, "What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you." Acceptance is not surrender. It's not weakness. It is choosing to stop fighting a reality that already exists. It's choosing to look back, not with bitterness, but with gratitude for the lessons learned. And from that gratitude, walking forward, lighter, wiser, and more aligned with who you are. Some of the most powerful decisions we ever make are not the loud ones. They don't come with fanfare. They whisper. But those whispers can shift the course of your entire life. Choosing peace is one of them. And sometimes, in order to have peace, you must close certain doors. You have to silence the noise. You must let go of people. And yes, many times peace is not found in the presence of others, but in solitude. Because there are connections that disrupt your balance more than silence ever could. There are "I love yous" that feel more like chains. There are embraces that suffocate rather than comfort. Choosing peace is no longer explaining yourself, no longer needing to justify your limits. It's realizing that you don't need chaos or conflict to validate your decision. Have you ever felt a strange sense of relief after a separation, even though it hurt? That deep sigh that rises from the soul. That is the sound of your truth, finally breathing freely. Not everyone will understand. Some will say you've become cold. Others will think you've changed. But the truth is different. The truth is that you simply stopped negotiating your inner peace. Carl Jung also said, "Freedom is achieved when you no longer need the approval of others." And that kind of freedom often comes dressed as solitude. But it's a sacred solitude. One that doesn't leave you empty, but cleanses you. One that doesn't isolate you, but protects you. Choosing peace means choosing yourself. And that, more than anything else, is the most profound act of self-love you can give. When you stop pretending, the world begins to shift. Not because everything outside changes, but because your inner world starts to vibrate on a different frequency. And as if the universe responds to your authenticity, new souls begin to arrive. People who don't want to mold you, who don't want to fix you, who feel at ease just by being in your presence, exactly as you are. They don't show up immediately. First, life empties you. It strips away everything. It leaves you standing alone, open-handed, vulnerable. But then, slowly, new energies begin to enter. They're quieter, deeper, more real. Souls that have also walked through shadows, who know what pain feels like, who no longer want to play games. They cherish silence just as much as they value a truthful word. With them, you don't have to impress anyone. You don't need masks. Your presence is enough. Your essence is enough. And in that realization, you finally understand why you had to lose so much, why you had to be alone, why it hurt so deeply to awaken. It was all necessary. The soil had to be cleared. The roots had to be pulled. The pain had to be felt. So that new relationships could bloom. Not perfect ones, but conscious ones. Not eternal, but real. Carl Jung expressed it with profound wisdom. Find the people who make you feel like you can be yourself without effort. Those people are your true home. Your authenticity is like a lighthouse. It doesn't chase, it simply shines. And sooner or later, it draws in those who are walking toward the same kind of light. Now, as you look back from where you are today, you might realize something powerful. It wasn't a loss, it was a liberation. You didn't lose people. You lost an old version of yourself. The version that stayed quiet out of fear. The one that settled for emotional crumbs. The one that begged for love, disguised as attention, affection, or companionship. That version of you no longer exists. And with it, many people had to leave too. And that's okay, because you are no longer who you once were. Today, you live in a body that is more aware, more awake, a heart that has become more discerning, more protective of its energy. A soul that finally understands it deserves deep, healthy connections, relationships rooted in truth, in silence that doesn't feel heavy, in presence that doesn't demand masks, a soul that craves glances free of judgment. Today, you no longer cling to what hurts just because you're afraid of being alone. You now understand that solitude can be a companion, not a punishment. You've learned that letting go of those who never truly saw you isn't abandonment. It's self-worth. It's self-recognition. And from this inner truth, you can finally say, with peace in your heart, I'm not losing people. I'm returning to myself. Carl Jung once said, a life not lived is a disease from which one can die. And you've chosen to live. You've chosen to awaken. You've chosen to be. And that, right there, is the greatest gift you could ever give yourself. To be you. Not a version shaped by others' expectations. Not a self edited to be accepted. But your raw, real, honest self. Even if that means starting again, with fewer people, but with more soul. So ask yourself, did you really lose people? Or did you finally let go of what no longer aligned with your truth? Who were you when they loved you? And more importantly, who are you now that you've chosen to love yourself? Take a moment. Close your eyes. Just breathe. Feel the space inside you that used to be crowded with fear, with anxiety, with the desperate need to be seen or loved. Feel it now. Feel how that space, even if it aches, is filled with air, with clarity, with spirit. Maybe this message touched something deep within you. Maybe you saw yourself in more than one sentence. If you did, then let me remind you of this. You are not alone. There are thousands of souls out there, quietly waking up, just like you, choosing peace over performance, healing their roots, reclaiming their dignity. And together, even in silence, we are rising. If this message reached you at a difficult time in your life, if it resonated with you when everything seemed uncertain or overwhelming, I invite you from the bottom of my heart to consider supporting us with a super like. It may seem like a small gesture, but it has the power to sustain this space, this channel that strives every day to reach more souls, to create content that doesn't just inform or entertain, but truly connects. Content that speaks from the soul, that embraces truth, and that honors the essence of our shared humanity. Behind every video, there is a story. There is a moment of silence that turned into reflection, a moment of pain that became light, a wound that began to heal simply because someone felt seen, heard, and understood. That is what we try to do here. We don't just publish words or images. We build a bridge that connects your inner world with someone else's. And maybe, just maybe, in that connection, something begins to shift within you. A burden feels lighter. A thought becomes clearer. A part of you that was dormant begins to awaken. If anything we've created has helped you take a deep breath when you felt like you couldn't breathe, if our words have guided you as you faced your own darkness, if this channel has served as a beacon during your emotional storms, then please remember that your support means more than you can imagine. It allows us to continue walking alongside you and countless others on their journey home, toward their truest and most authentic selves. And if you haven't yet, I encourage you to subscribe. Be part of this community that believes in healing, truth, and transformation. We're not here by chance. We're all part of this collective awakening. Each of us walks our own path, learning to let go of what no longer serves us, daring to be who we truly are, despite the noise, fear, and doubt. In the comments, I invite you to share. What have you released on your own journey to your true self? What old story, fear, or identity did you leave behind to make way for the person you are becoming? Your words could be just what someone else needs to read today. We heal in community. We grow when we witness each other's truth. We remember who we are when someone dares to share who they are. Thank you for being here. Thank you for choosing this moment, for opening your heart, for walking this path with us.